Well, hello, and welcome to the Horror Screams podcast. We're part of the Horror Screams Video Vault website, of course. This is episode 25, and quite a fun one, I think, in store. Obviously, we'd say that. We wouldn't say, oh, quite a crap one in store tonight. So, yes, thanks for joining us. As ever, I'm joined by our co-host, Sarah. Hello, Sarah. How's it going?
It's going good, thank you. Good to be here. Looking forward to it. As you say, it's going to be a lot of fun.
It is, yes, absolutely, yes. If you've read the description or title, you'll realize this is the Dracula special. So we're going to be talking about Dracula, not the man, not just Dracula like four. He's a bit of all right, but the films that he inspired.
Oh, see, I always thought we were just going to be just chatting about how hot Dracula is. Damn it.
He is quite hot. That's quite an interesting topic in itself. And then,
yeah, I mean, we could dedicate half an hour to that.
Like, go for look at the cloak on that. Yeah, because he's been played by a really diverse bunch of people, old Dracula, and which probably covers all tastes, really, when you look at all the people that have played Dracula, because there's somebody out there that probably really fancies Leslie Nielsen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's up there.
And of course, he's been played by Gerard Butler. So yeah, all men are in Dracula. Not literally, obviously, that'd be weird. But yes, so welcome and welcome, Sarah. So we're recording this almost at the end of November. Christ, the 19th of November. We're recording this. It goes out obviously a week later. So the year has vanished. We have one more episode of the year. Shocking, hey Sarah, shocking.
It is. It's just ridiculous how quickly it's going.
Yeah. And we've kind of been more free this year. The lockdown's kind of petered out at some stage. It's been possibly more.
We've been actually allowed to get out and do stuff. Although, to be fair, I probably haven't really that much. Should be going out to the cinema and stuff more, but I still haven't done it.
Yeah, it's strange. I've done the cinema a few times this year and a little bit last year. Strangely, actually, the other day on Wednesday, in fact, I went to a kind of theatre for the first time since the plague.
Cool.
Went to the Playhouse in Norwich, which is for those not familiar with Norwich, or Norwich, as some people say, is a small theatre, a very lovely small theatre by the river in Norwich. And I watched something that I wasn't familiar with, but there was apparently a TV series called Phoenix Nights a few years ago.
Yes, I knew that. Peter Kay, yeah.
Absolutely. And I never watched it, but I probably would like it. I just never got around to it. And there's a character, a fake psychic called Clinton Baptiste. That's part of it. That's possibly a small part. I don't know because I never watched it. And this is his show. This is entirely that. And having grown up, as I'm pretty sure that Sarah did as well, on crap TV medium stroke psychics like, I don't know, Doris Stokes or Uri Geller, or later, I guess, Most Haunted. His act is entirely based around that, with the added bonus that he has the most shrill, the most genuinely hilarious, but I suppose possibly completely jarring high-pitched voice possible. Because there's a massive bombastic dark orchestral thing that introduces him, and he comes and goes, oh hi, yeah. And a lot of it is based on the joke, which is a great joke, of all those mediums that go, oh, I'm picking up have you ever known someone called John in your life? Yes, I have. Yes. It's coming through. It's that. There were lots of great
fantastic
jokes. There were lots of great jokes. One of my favorite jokes was because he was randomly picking on people in the audience, as these mediums do, and he came really close to us, and I was freaking out, getting the hot sweats. Don't choose me, and because he was insulting everybody, obviously, as you do. And he said to somebody, "Oh, do you have a dog?" And like, "Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, I have a dog. Yeah. Oh, my condolences for next Wednesday."
Oh,
it was a great joke. And the even better was that there was an old couple in front of us that were really stony faced the whole time, which I imagine they thought they're probably here to see a real psychic.
Oh, amazing. So, that's just brilliant.
So that was my first kind of, whereas I've been to the cinema, I go very kind of non-sociable times of day, like in the morning on a Saturday to watch a kids film. So there's usually been 4 people in it, but this is the first time I've been in a theatre type situation, which was pretty sold out. So that was, a kind of refreshing change, I guess, after all this time. But yeah, that was good. Good job. Yeah. Well, as always, before we get to the old hot Dracula stuff, and it will be really hot, obviously. It's time for our recently seen, Sarah, which is our little spot where we ponder over what we've watched in the last month or so, apart from Dracula films, which obviously we've been intensively researching.
Oh yeah.
100 years of cinema Dracula films. Watched all of them. We watched every single one in the last month, obviously. Recently seen for me is a bit limited to kind of old stuff. For Halloween, actually, I showed my daughter. My daughter's 10, and we watched. I managed to convince her to watch some horror movies because she's watched it, the newer version, and really liked it. So I said, if you want, we can watch some more. So we did, and we watched things like The Gate, the 80s film with the stop motion creatures in, which is really good
Oh,
fun.
nice. Yeah.
Holds up really well. It's got a very young Stephen Dorff in it.
Mm-hmm.
We watched The Hole, which is the Joe Dante film. Actually, really spooky.
Mm.
It's one of those 12 rated films that can be a 12 because there's no gore in it and there's not much swearing and there's no sex, but the whole thing's really disturbingly frightening. And that's really cool. We watched the remake of Pet Sematary again, which I
Yeah.
still think is a better film than the old one. I really like the remake.
Yeah.
I think it's
with you on that.
powerful. The acting's better because I always thought, apart from Fred Gwynne, I always thought the acting in the old one is just terrible. But this one I thought was good, and I really like the switcheroo as well about having the daughter. Yeah, it works so well, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think they kind of like shot themselves in the foot in the first one by going with such a young kid, to be the main focus. Whereas with this Pet Sematary, they decided to switch around, go from one that's slightly older, and the ending is pretty sinister as well, isn't it?
Really sinister. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a kind of there's a different ending as an alternative on the disc, which I think is nowhere near as good as the one that they used. But yeah, the ending works really well, and the whole thing. And yeah, as you said, because she's older, and they're able to get a really good young actress to play the daughter.
Yeah,
it worked really dramatically. It worked really well. Some really disturbing stuff of like, and Jason Clarke is fantastic as the dad as well. Really disturbing stuff of turning her hair in the Church the cat. That works really
creepy.
well. I think the stuff about Zelda, the sister works better, which was the thing that gave me nightmares when I was younger from the book and the original film.
They just kind of do snippets of her in the remake, don't they? They don't try and make a big thing of it, which actually makes it even more creepy.
Yeah, and as you get older, this stuff I think resonates more because it's in a lot of King stuff. Actually, a lot of King films or books rather are about disease and people getting very sick and that being the real horror. And as you get older, you realize these things are out there. I think she has spinal meningitis, doesn't she?
Something like that, yeah.
And it's a rather ingenious way of presenting, what this real disease would look like to a child. This monster in the room that you're caring for, and is how disgusting the human body can get when it gets all wrecked and ruined and ill. So yeah, I really liked that. So I was glad that held up because I remember it being really good at the cinema. I got a hold of the indulged myself and got the first 5 Halloween films on 4K. And randomly, because I'd seen the first Halloween at the cinema, I think last year on re-release, I started with part 2, as you do. So I watched 2 and 3 because I hadn't watched either of those for ages, and they're fantastic. The 4K restoration, especially for older films that were shot on film rather than stuff these days is usually shot on digital. 4K format does them an amazing service. I mean, there's stuff in Halloween 2 I'd never noticed before, like there's a scene, because obviously it's set at a hospital because they take Laurie to the hospital, where she's kind of catatonic for the whole film, so it's a bit underwhelming in the Laurie department. But there's a scene where a kid arrives at the hospital, and I always remember on VHS wondering why he was bleeding from the mouth because it doesn't really explain it in the dialogue and it's really dark. But in this, I could actually see the razor blade that's sticking out of his mouth. Which I'd never noticed before because I'd seen it on VHS and probably on DVD. So I was thinking, wow, yeah, it makes sense. Halloween night, he had one of those razor apples, and you get to see a juicy shot of it. But yeah, it's great. It holds up really well. But my favorite Halloween sequel of all is Halloween 3, which is the the odd one out.
Yeah, I bet that looked. I bet the like advert sequences and stuff looked pretty cool in 4K.
It really does, because it's the most, because obviously the rest of them are all shot at night in Haddonfield, and the 4K does a really good service sometimes to the shadows and things like that. Not the Cliff Richard band, but Halloween 3 is a lot of it in daylight. There's a lot of colors, the masks, and all that stuff. And as you said, 12 more days to Halloween, the Silver Shamrock thing, yeah, fantastic. Yeah. And it's Halloween 3 is the most gruesome of them. It's got some really, really gory bits where like the mask thing misfires and someone's face gets ripped apart. Yeah, I'm totally on board with Halloween 3. So it was a real pleasure to watch that, all spruced up in 4K.
Nice.
It's a very nice release from Scream Factory. And one of those films as well where it's got a really interesting behind the scenes stories of how the original writer, the great Nigel Neal, one of our own in Britain, got fed up and stormed off and hates it. Well, he's gone, he's dead now, but he hated what became of it because John Carpenter was involved in rewriting it. But pretty much his ideas were there, and the ideas are kind of bonkers, and the ideas are pretty bleak, which is that this mad creator of masks and other things decides it'd be a great idea, using the power of the ancient druids and a stone that they've stolen from Stonehenge,
yep.
To sacrifice millions of children on Halloween night by using these specially equipped masks and a TV broadcast at 9 o'clock. And their heads will kind of melt into a bunch of lizards and spiders and things.
Yeah, it's cool. How could you not think that would be a thing?
I know. And at the end, depending on how you take the ending, which it's 40 years old, so there's no point saying spoilers, but depending on how you take the ending, which is I was going to say Tom Hanks, it's not, it's Tom Atkins. Tom Atkins shouting "stop it" down a phone, they kind of get away with it because it looks like it's too late because it's the stroke of 9. So it's fantastic. Yeah,
Halloween. It's a good one. So good.
My favourite. And the only other thing I'll say from recently seen is my last trip to the cinema for an adult film, not adult as in porn, was Last Night in Soho, which is the latest Edgar Wright film.
Yes.
So yeah.
What did you think?
I
don't know a lot about it.
Yeah, I really loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
Is it more of a thriller thing?
It's hard. Well, yeah. I mean, it's very giallo-y. It's very 70s, kind of Argento in style, and I guess in plot-ish. You could argue it's kind of a ghost story in a way, although it's not at the same time. It's got some real proper gore in it, but not all the way through. So to say too much would be spoiling some very big things. But I think you say it's a horror movie for sure. And it's also, out of all of his films, it's the one that has the least humor, but it still has a bit of humor, but it's the most serious out of all of his films for sure. But it's fantastic. I've liked most of Edgar Wright's things. I was never much of a fan of The World's End.
Okay.
Like that much, but
all the its moments.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, and it had an impossible act to follow because it was after Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
I love Scott Pilgrim. I thought Baby Driver was fantastic.
You see, I'm yet to see Baby Driver. I want to see it, but I haven't as yet.
Awesome. Yeah, really good. Last Night in Soho, he's fantastic. I really liked him. And it's, if you're a fan of kind of the 70s stuff, I suppose, or even the 60s stuff, it really helps. It's got a proper 1960s soundtrack because it's about a modern day girl that moves to London as a student, and somehow seems to be experiencing the 1960s experiences of a kind of glamour girl from 60s London. So she kind of seems to have these blackouts where she inhabits the body of this girl in the 60s. Much more away would genuinely spoil where it goes. But you think it's going to be a kind of nostalgic thing, and then the whole point is really that actually, we look back on the 60s being fantastic, but nostalgia ain't what it seems, and this was quite a grim place in 1960 Soho. But it's superb, it really is. It's got some gore in it. It's got a great mystery. The leading character is really likable, and it's got some old stars in it. It was the last film that Diana Rigg made, and she has a fantastic part.
Cool.
Terence Stamp is in it, and
nice.
And it's I can safely say it's the best ever use in a horror film of Cilla Black. And
Okay,
she's a
now I'm
big part of it,
intrigued.
genuinely. She's
Oh, I
obviously she's dead,
suppose,
so she's
yeah,
not in it.
yeah.
But
I suppose going back to her time, does it have any other songs in it?
it has, yeah. If you know the song by Cilla, "You're My World," that's a massive part of it.
Oh, cool.
And there is, I don't know who plays it, but Cilla Black is in the movie, as an incidental character in 60s London or person. But yeah, I thought it was superb. I highly recommend it. It's an odd one because it's kind of come out and it's not nearly as commercial as all of his other films, really, because it's like, well, nobody seems to know what it is, because it quite necessarily the marketing is having to be quite discreet about where it goes and what it really is.
Yeah.
But for sure, it's a horror film.
Cool. Good to know.
Yeah. Nice. So, Sarah, what have you recently seen and been up to?
My recently scenes have been randomly flicking through Prime, to be fair, in the desperate attempt to find something. But I actually came across one that you've recommended before, and it's Ready or Not.
Oh, Ready or Not's fantastic.
Finally watched that. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. It's absolutely nuts, isn't it? And Samara Weaving,
Bonkers.
I love her to bits, but yeah, her screaming at the end, it's quite off-putting.
She's great. She's fantastic in everything. Mayhem.
She
What
is
was the
fantastic.
Daniel Radcliffe film that we liked her in recently?
Oh,
Not Guns Akimbo, is it?
That's it. That's the one.
That
Yeah, Guns Akimbo. She was fabulous in that. Yeah, she was more like, I don't know, more of a badass in that. This one, she's kind of an unassuming hero who, you kind of wouldn't think, looking at her to start off with, she'd end up the way that she did. But it kind of reminds me, it's nothing like Rec 3, but it kind of has that vibe to it of her as the bride.
Sure.
Kind of reminds me a little bit of Rec 3, but it has nothing to do with zombies or anything like that. She just ends up marrying into a rich family that have this horrendous tradition of putting these games on when you get married, and the games pretty much end up in one or t'other getting killed, family or bride. And I think they think it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. She chooses like a completely unassuming game of hide and seek, and it all goes a little bit crazy from there. There's some absolutely hilarious bits with like some crazy family members and stuff, just not having a clue what they're doing with the weapons and stuff that they've got, just randomly shooting things and maids and things like that. But yeah, there's some great bits. There's some good gore, and and the bit in the goat farm with the kid, that's quite cringy and ouchy, but yeah, that was a great recommend.
It's so much fun. I think that's the reason, because it's the guys that made it that are doing the new Scream film. That's the reason I think that we should be quite hopeful for the new Scream film, because
oh sure, yeah, if it's anything like that's anything to go on, yeah.
Did you find we won't say what it is, but did you find because I remember watching it in the cinema, and the ending, there was a massive laugh from the back of the audience, because it's such a great moment, which
yeah, absolutely
kind of warrants that reaction.
Yeah, it comes as a shock, but it's kind of got undertones as to what you think is going to happen all the way through the movie. But still at the end, you're still kind of none the wiser until things start happening, and then you're just like, what? Whoa! As if it wasn't bloody enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, very good. Very enjoyable. That's a great one, that was. The other thing that I watched was a massive letdown, to be fair, because you know how much we loved that lovely movie last year, Army of the Dead?
Oh no. Yes. Yeah, great. Yeah.
You know what's coming. You know how much we love that. So they've now released already a prequel. There was talk of it at the time, as soon as the film would be released, there's going to be a whole multiverse of Army of the Dead, and they've already released a prequel which follows Dieter, the safecracker, called Army of Thieves. And oh my god, that was an absolute chore. It's directed by the actor Matthias, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Schweihofer, something like that. He actually plays Dieter. He directed the whole movie and basically made up his own story. And okay, it's kind of funny because he's probably the best character in the film. He still does a lot of screaming, but it has very little relation to Army of the Dead at all. In fact, they might as well have just not bothered putting any zombies in it at all, because there's literally 3 scenes with a zombie and 2 of them are like dream sequences.
Man.
Oh, it's just, no, my friend was like, oh my God, have you seen it? I really liked it. I thought it was great. I was like, oh, okay, this might be a thing. And oh my God, it's so boring.
Wait, is it as long as Army of the Dead?
It's not quite as. Oh, actually, yeah, it's about 2 hours.
Jeez, why are they 2 hours?
I sat through it for about 2 hours. It is basically another like heist movie, just kind of how he ended up being like the top safe cracker that he was, and he joins a team of people that are trying to crack all these amazing safes before the world ends. And it kind of ends with the zombie apocalypse, and the final scenes are kind of the beginning scenes of him appearing in Army of the Dead. And he has a different name all the way through, and you're like, well, I was like, I don't even know how this even marries up to Army of the Dead. And then right at the end, you kind of find out that he changes his name, and you're like, oh.
Oh, man.
Sorry if I've spoiled that for anyone, but you now don't need to sit through the 2 hours of it.
Who is watching? I never quite understand. Like, who is asking for more or a prequel to those awful people?
They must have literally just like finished filming the Army of the Dead and just gone, right, quick, right, let's go, let's do this next one.
Yeah, because it's been so recent, hasn't it? Yeah.
But yeah, no, I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't quite know. Luckily, I had loads of other stuff to do at the time, and it's one of those movies that is quite boring. So I was sat there like writing about something completely different whilst I was watching it, and
defrost the freezer, other jobs.
That kind of stuff. That kind of stuff. But yeah, that's one to avoid.
Yeah.
And then also, because Walking Dead has done it again and done its mid-season break for God knows how long, and I'm stuck with Disney Plus. I decided I was going to start watching the new season of American Horror Story, which is season 10, called Double Feature, and so far so good. I'm really enjoying it. They like to do this on American Horror Story, though. It always starts off really, really well, and then kind of sometimes takes a bit of a nosedive halfway through. But no, I'm really enjoying this one. It's kind of like themed on what we're talking about tonight. It's lots of things bringing back the whole kind of vampire thing. Obviously, they did it with Hotel, but this is again a vampire thing, but not the same as your typical vampires. So it's kind of about writers, people that have talent, take this drug, which makes them better at what they do. But if you're a person that isn't quite as talented, you end up becoming this kind of like bloodthirsty Nosferatu type vampire type thing. But the people that take the pill also have to like substitute their diet with human blood and stuff like that. So they don't actually develop fangs or anything, but they have to find ways of getting the human blood. And so it's got a great cast in it as well. It's got your usual Evan Peters is in it. Sarah Paulson is brilliant. She plays a character called Tuberculosis Karen. She's like basically this old hag that lives under a kind of like beach jetty and constantly ill. Oh my God, she looks an absolute mess, but she's really good in this. Finn Whitrock plays like one of the main characters. He's a down and out writer that moves up there with his family, who then gets kind of hooked on this drug. But it also has a great part with for Macaulay Culkin.
Oh, I like Macaulay Culkin. That's cool.
He's bloody brilliant in this. I absolutely love him, and it's like good to see him back. He plays a kind of like meth head gay guy, completely bonkers. But I think his story is going to play quite a big part in the season. So hopefully we'll see more of him.
Cool. I had no idea that he was involved. Actually, I don't know anything about this one. So
No,
that's cool.
I had no idea until I saw his little face, and I was like, oh my god, good to
It's
see him.
interesting, yeah. Because I've seen. Oh, wait a minute. Which I've seen Haley Joel Osment in a few things recently. Man, he was in something big.
Oh yeah, he's coming back.
Yeah, yeah, which is really cool. And oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that was it. It was in the second season of What We Do in the Shadows. He was the guy. He dies in
Yeah.
the first episode. Yeah, hilariously. Yeah, now that's cool. Is Jessica Lange still part of it?
No,
Kathy
no,
Bates?
and no. Kathy Bates hasn't turned up in this yet. I don't actually know if she's left or anything on that. I know Jessica Lange has.
Yeah.
Dennis O'Hare has turned up a few times, but he seems to have a little bit of a bit part at the moment. But we'll just kind of see where it goes.
Yeah, because it's the one. Even the seasons that as you suggest tail off or are not very good. The one thing the show always does or has done is give what look like fantastic fun roles for Sarah Paulson and Kathy Bates, Jessica Lange especially. That they probably wouldn't get anywhere else really. The proper off the chain roles that must be fantastic for an actor.
Absolutely, and Jessica Lange was great. I do kind of miss not seeing her.
Yeah.
In the shows, but it's been a while now. I think Freak Show was her last appearance, which was season 4.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah. Oh, and also, I almost forgot. Halloween night, I popped it down to London to the final Simul Paramedics gig at the Dome in Tufnell Park, and it was amazing. It was so good. I was really nervous because I always like dress up as a zombie, especially when I go to see Simul Paramedics. That's kind of what they do, and I was kind of worried about having to ride the tube dressed as a zombie, but I kind of I tried to chill myself out about it and was kind of like, don't worry, Sarah, it's Halloween. There'll be loads of people like dressed up going to Halloween parties. Was there? Was there? Fuck.
On Halloween itself as well.
Yeah, there was still just normal people kind of looking around, but they did not pay me the slightest bit of attention, which was the good thing about it. But no, that was a really, really awesome night. They absolutely played their socks off. They played an immense set as well, really good. They chose songs from all of their albums, and then they did like a segment where they played their very first demo, because the whole reason for the gigs and stuff was to celebrate their 20-year anniversary. They first started 2001. Their first gig was Halloween, and they'd released a demo beforehand so people would know the songs. So they basically played the demo in its entirety and stuff, which was great. They played some new songs from their brand new album, which they decided to release in between announcing they were playing. They were like, oh, by the way, we just popped into the studio and recorded an album. So, we weren't expecting any new stuff. And they laid a couple of the new tracks on us as well, which was great. Their set was fabulous. They have a great kind of like set of props and stuff. Obviously, they're dressed up as zombies, and B. Hellmouth, the singer, has his like props that are just like human heads that he like munches the brains off and stuff. It's just really cool. It was so much fun. It was a really good night.
Awesome. Where was the venue? Whereabouts is that in London?
Tufnell Park. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know London very well. I literally just sit on the tube and off we go.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, it sounds like it would be a big place, but it's a little venue kind of off a side street.
Hey, did you get any merchandise? Was there merchandise?
Oh my god, yes, of course I did.
That's the best
I
bit,
certainly did. Oh, that's the thing, like I didn't want to take a bag with me, so I think I spoke to a few friends. I was like, hey, what do you reckon? I know I'm like pushing 40 years old and stuff now. I was like, is it cool to wear a bum bag at a gig? Because I was like, I want to be in the pit and I don't want to have a bag on me. And I kind of got mixed reviews from people. So I thought, sod it. I'm gonna try this bum bag thing. So I got myself a bum bag. I wasn't the only one there either with a bum bag.
Yeah, see,
which was amazing.
The least intrusive option, yeah.
Yeah, but then we kind of like literally as soon as you walk in, there's the merchandise, and I'm like, oh my god, t-shirts. I was like, must get them now because they might sell out by the end of the night. And then I'm like, well, now I'm back to square one. What do I do with all the t-shirts? But yeah, they gave me a free tote bag as well.
Ah,
So yeah, I spent 60 quid on t-shirts and got myself a free tote bag with it as well, and was back to square one with like holding a bag of t-shirts. But it was silly because I was all like excited, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to be in the pit. I haven't been in the pit for like, I haven't been to a gig for over a year because of the whole lockdown thing. I was like, I haven't been in the
yeah.
pit for years. I'm getting a bit too old for this. I was like, this will be the last time I do this. And then when it actually like started, I chickened out. I was like, oh my god, it's really scary. I'm not going in there. I said,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna stand at the sides and actually, like, watch the band properly for a change. Because most of the time,
Yes.
like, seeing someone paramedics, I've just been like pulled in the pit, falling over, twatting my head on things, not really paying attention to the band. So this time, I don't think I can do this. I'm just gonna stand and watch. But I was on the edge of the pit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and we got to see them properly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it was so much fun. It's sad that it's all kind of over and done with now because I've been looking forward to the gig for like an entire year. They advertised that there might be a
Mm.
potential reanimation on 2020, the midst of the pandemic and stuff. And then when I knew it was happening, you just literally just been counting down the days for an entire
Yeah.
year, and kind of it's all kind of over now, which is a little bit sad and a little bit deflating. But it was
Yeah.
great that they did it. It was good to see them one last time. There's plenty of write-ups about it on various places. There's a good one on Brain Bites, I believe,
Mm.
which is good to read up on. I think they've covered like the whole of their back catalogue, the new album and the gig. So, it's all been documented, and their website and stuff has got an amazing archive of all the old photos, and they've got some brilliant like new band photos and stuff from the recent gigs and stuff to check out. So yeah, have a look at all that. It's all good stuff.
Nice, man. That's a great thing to have gone to, isn't it? For 20
Yeah,
years.
absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah, don't think that'll ever happen again. I think they're probably live wise. They might, you never know, decide they might release some more material at some point, but I don't know about playing live anymore. I think they're probably about the same age as me, and they're probably thinking we're getting a bit too old for this now.
yeah, it's shocking, isn't it, when you think anything like that, like 20 years, really? What?
Yeah.
Nice. Any other recently seen or done, Sarah?
No, I think that is it for me.
Wow. It's been a brisk month, and I don't think, I may be incorrect in saying this, but I don't think either of us has still watched Larmageddon. Is that true?
No, still haven't. It's on
Ah,
the
man.
list. It's on the list. Haven't got around to it yet.
Not going to be there forever, is it? It's going to, the one
No,
time
that's
it's going to
true.
settle down. Larmageddon time, it's gone, or it costs £400 or
Yeah,
something. God damn it. If the makers of Larmageddon are tuning into this, obviously we promise we'll get around to watching it,
absolutely.
devote much time to it. Wonderbar. Yes, well, thanks, Sarah. So yeah, it's been another brisk month, but we now arrive at our main feature this episode, which is all about Dracula, Sarah.
It is
Dracula.
lovely, lovely Dracula.
There's one
So
thing.
many.
Oh, there is. Where do you start?
Yeah, right. So the first one we're going to talk about is 1920s.
It's mad. The one thing I always think of, and we were talking just off air beforehand about like the Hammer sequels and stuff, but there's a great moment in Taste the Blood of Dracula where the what was actually quite a popular English kind of comedian actor called Roy Kinnear is the one that kicks the plot off in Taste the Blood of Dracula, and he says at one point, "Dracula's blood." It's such a great moment, and yeah, these movies are full of them, and it's endless, really. I mean, there's so many. I don't think it's possible to physically name all of the Dracula adaptations because they're from all around the world. Although this year is a big anniversary year because it's the 90th anniversary of the Lugosi Dracula from 31.
Oh,
It's
wow.
100 years since the allegedly first ever Dracula adaptation, which was, well, not really an adaptation, but certainly using Dracula's name, which was Dracula's Death, a lost film from 1921, made in Hungary, or it's a Hungarian Austrian production. It's 100 years next year for Nosferatu, which
Mm-hmm.
was an unofficial adaptation, calling the Count Orlok, and obviously giving him a very different look to the Dracula in the book by Bram Stoker. So yeah, and then from there, 100 Years of Cinema, has either directly adapted Dracula, used bits of it, kind of done Dracula style characters called something else. So there's just loads of them. Have you read the book, Sarah, or have you read the book recently, or either?
God, no, not recently. I have read it, but yeah, many years ago.
Yeah, same here actually. It's been a long time, because it's one of those things that you don't necessarily have high up on your list at any stage, but you're like, oh, I'm expected to read this. I've got to read this. Is like the law or something.
Yes.
And it's it is what it is. It was written in 1897, and Bram Stoker, this kind of from what I can tell, obviously I didn't meet him, but this kind of starchy, stiff guy, Irish guy that did loads of other things, but obviously only ever remembered for Dracula. Although he did do Lair of the White Worm and Jewel of the Seven Stars, which is a kind of horror story. I think it's called that, which became things like The Awakening was based on that. And he wrote this kind of weird book, this weird kind of moist, wet kind of STD book in effect, which has been endlessly copied. And it's pretty hard to actually decide which are the best Dracula films. I still don't know if I can truly say that my favorite is blah, but I can certainly say the one that I've enjoyed and probably watched the most. That's probably the easiest way to decide. And when you look at these films, they all kind of do different things with the book. Like there's never been a really faithful adaptation of the book, because the book is obviously written in a very strange way. It's an epistolary novel, so it's written in the form of letters and like broadcasts, and not broadcasts, but telegrams and things like that. So it's structured in a way that makes it tricky to adapt. Although things like Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Coppola version, do a fairly good job of trying to do that in a form of a film, because it is a bit tricky to do. And some of them tit around with the characters. So in the Lugosi Dracula, Jonathan Harker Renfield roles are switched around a bit. So yeah. It's interesting. But as far as we're going to pick our sort of favorite, and then mention some other ones that we really like. And Sarah, you've got a very good one coming up. But so if I had to pick one out of all of them, out of 100 Years of Cinema, it would have to be really the Hammer one from 1958, which was called Dracula, which I thought was a good choice. Although in America it was called The Horror of Dracula, because there was a thing where Universal held the rights to Dracula. The book was public domain, I guess, or is now, but they held the rights so that Hammer couldn't take stuff, including the name Dracula, as a title. So it's called Horror of Dracula, as opposed to the fluffiness of Dracula. I guess there's probably a few options. But yeah, the 58 Dracula was like a major film for Hammer. They'd just done Curse of Frankenstein, so they were in the horror market. And the gimmick for Hammer, of course, is that they were taking these familiar horror characters and doing it in color with red blood. And all that.
And music.
And a proper orchestra. And that's the thing, isn't it? If you watch the Hammer films, especially Dracula and the sequels, and then you kind of watch the extra features on the discs and stuff, you think, oh yeah, the theme is actually saying the character's name. Like the theme tune of Dracula is literally Dracula. And then it does strangely follow through, even with the long titles. You watch Taste the Blood of Dracula and you listen to the main title theme and you realize, wow, they have found a way to fit that title into a theme. Taste the Blood of Dracula. So that's impressive. But the 58 Dracula, which really, is one I've watched Hammer films tons of times growing up, because they were the horror films that were safe enough to show on TV. They would show double bills of them on Friday nights, and they would come round every year. But they were really something special, because I loved the black and white stuff, but here was the, for the time, pretty gory stuff. I mean, the first Dracula film, the 58 Dracula, has some gory close-ups of stakes being hammered into chests. There's a decomposition of Dracula at the very end that, for its time, is pretty revolutionary, really.
It's done so well.
It really is, isn't it? It's a great effect.
You do kind of forget how early on that is. You can make a lot of comparisons to that and the Universal one from the 30s.
Yeah, it's really impressive. The Hammer 58 Dracula as well is a massively different film, as you say, to the Lugosi film, which we'll talk about as well later. but it's very action driven. So it's 80 minutes long and it's pretty brisk. It bins off loads of the shit characters from the book, basically. Because there is, well, with one or two exceptions, like in every version of Dracula, Jonathan Harker is a bit of a knob.
Yeah.
In every version in every adaptation of Dracula, Arthur Holmwood is really boring. So in this, he's played by
great in this. Yeah.
And he's played by Michael Gough, who's fantastic and got much more fun roles later on. But he's obviously a kind of stuffy old Englishman, isn't he? He says things like, "But it's horrible," But yeah, so it does that, and it uses Jonathan Harker in the opening bit, and quickly gets rid of him, really, because nobody really gives a monkeys about Jonathan Harker. But it's all about, to pardon the phrase, Christopher Lee's entrance. I mean, it's one of the great entrances of all time. I mean, Christopher Lee, in the credits of this, Peter Cushing was basically the famous guy at this point in Hammer's history. He's the leading man of Curse of Frankenstein. He was a popular TV actor. Christopher Lee was pretty unknown, so the credits have him low down. He is with Christopher Lee as Dracula. He's the and Jeff as the Doctor kind of actor.
Yeah,
rather than getting top billing. He's not the star.
Oh, by the way, yeah.
Incidentally, Christopher Lee was in this. And he's in it very little. If you look at it, I mean, he's in it more than some of the sequels where he pretty much pops around a bush now and again to say something. Oh yeah, I'm in this film. Oh, he's gone again. But in this, he's really only kind of in it in the opening stretch and definitely the finale. In between, there's not a lot of Dracula on screen stuff. Little kind of appearances, really. But because he's so powerful in the role, you think he's in it the whole way through.
Absolutely.
He's got that sense.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, very kind of commanding character for sure. Him and Peter Cushing, like you say, you say together, but they're not actually in it together that much. Because obviously, like the whole Jonathan Harker thing at the beginning is more dominated by Dracula's character because he's a bit of a wet lettuce, and then kind of Peter Cushing comes in as Van Helsing.
Yeah,
and then kind of like swapping between the two of them. But you kind of think for the time they are both very good-looking chaps.
Really, absolutely, yeah. And I think that was it, wasn't it? I think Hammer did this, the very good-looking Dracula, which Christopher Lee was, and that was a big part of his appeal, and a very different Dracula to Bela Lugosi. Even though the Lugosi film was also really sold as a love story, and he was a kind of romantic lead, I guess, in a weird way.
Yeah.
But yeah, Christopher Lee has that great first bit where he comes down the stairs. He's very charming. He's not trying to do the accent. He is doing his own accent, which I think makes a difference because it would totally ruin it, I think.
It would, if Christopher Lee tried to do an accent. He doesn't look the type, yeah.
No. But he's very charming and handsome and very intimidating, and that's the whole thing, isn't it? And I think it's sometime after that you get a massive close-up of where you see how he can turn on a dime into this kind of feral creature with blood dripping down his face, and hissing and throwing people across the rooms, which he does really well in this. So yeah, that's fantastic. Van Helsing is obviously a character that's changed so much over time. There's been lots of different versions of Van Helsing, as there has with Dracula, and that's interesting in itself. And in this, he's somewhere in the middle. I mean, Peter Cushing was, I suppose, I don't know, about 40 or so, and he's quite, as you said, quite a handsome, heroic lead. Really, he's very. I was
going to say, he's my favourite portrayal of Van Helsing for sure. I don't know where down the line they then decided to start casting kind of older granddad type people.
Yeah.
They might have got that from the Lugosi one because Van Helsing and that is an older guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he's very much that kind of grandfatherly figure. And here, because he's quite serious, is Van Helsing in this, but he's a gentler one than a lot of them. And I think as the sequels go on, that carries on, although he doesn't appear in that many of the sequels. It's mostly Christopher Lee. But yeah, there's something very charming about him too, although very efficient. You totally trust him to sort things out.
Absolutely.
And he is also the Basil exposition guy that I think they use him quite cleverly because he has these intervals where he said, "Oh yeah, there's been rumors that vampires can turn into wolves or bats," but he basically says we don't really have the budget for that, so it's not true.
Yeah.
Um, which is in a way it's good because they do bring in things like rubber bats from Woolworths in later sequels, and you're like, oh crumbs, you can see the
Oh,
string. Um, so I think it's good that they didn't kind of do things that were beyond the special effects of the period, which
for
can sometimes
sure.
be a bit distracting.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
kind of
it's
more
fantastic.
insinuated, but they kind of go for the, like you say, they go for the more kind of violent portrayal of Dracula, more with the fangs and the blood, and
Yeah,
whereas in the Lugosi one, you don't see a single fang.
no, very true. Yeah, yeah, it's very downplayed, isn't it?
Yeah, he goes
And
to bite
it's
people's necks, but then it kind of pans away. It's all about the fingers,
yeah, and that's
spooky
kind of
fingers in the Lugosi one,
extraordinary.
which is kind of sinister and stuff, but kind of Christopher Lee kind of takes it up a notch.
Yeah,
and
I think
and
so.
and they kind of shot themselves in the foot in the Lugosi one with the bat thing. I mean, for 1931, the special effects were probably quite good, and it was quite. I think it was a big idea of them to do that with the big giant monster like floppy bat and stuff. But
Yeah.
it does kind of take the edge off, whereas they probably decided against that idea for the Hammer version.
Yeah, I think so. There's something a bit more kind of grounded to this and the Frankenstein movie the year before as well. Um, so the supernatural elements are downplayed really, apart from Dracula himself and his power, whatever it is. Certainly stuff in the book like him, and then they do it later on in a different sequel of him kind of descending the castle walls outside. I think it's Jonathan Harker that looks out the window and sees him going down the wall
Yeah.
in a bat-like fashion, which again, if they'd have staged that at this stage, it would have been a bit dodgy. Um, but it's so much of it is about the in terms of sex and violence, which for the time, again, this was very shocking, as was the other Hammer films from the 50s. It's still kind of got an impact because it's all very suggestive. Like I always love the scenes of I think it's Lucy that
Yeah.
she's under his spell and she takes off her cross and she's opening her
Hmm.
windows for him and she's already been penetrated in terms of her neck. So
Yeah.
she's just waiting for the next visit from this older, more interesting man than the doddery, stuffy, stiff English bastards that she's stuck with. And
Mm.
that's the key thing about, and especially if you watch the sequels as well, is how the Hammer films show how repressed the ladies are and how boring they are and how stuck in this tiresome kind of English thing. But then they become vampires and they're very vibrant and very interesting and
Mm.
um, total transformation, especially of Barbara Shelley in Dracula, Prince of Darkness, where she's this downtrodden Victorian woman that finally gets unleashed because she's been bitten by Drac. So yeah, so that's really cool. I love those moments. I think they're really eerie and interesting. Um, and it's got everything kind of hammerish that would become the norm is in this. Like it's got the comedy bits with Miles Malleson, I think, is the doddery Undertaker, and there's the guy. What's the guy that's there's the comedy guy as well. I think he's bribed. I've forgotten who he is, but there's a few things like that, along with the trip to the Hammer pub, which where
Yes.
where everybody's really English, but one of them's called Inga, because they
Yeah.
figure, well, it's Eastern Europe, and here we are in Klausenberg, um, and it's 10p for a map to Castle Dracula or something. But yeah, it's terrific, and it's 80-minute notes. It's fast paced, and it does have easily, regardless of like what came after the budgets and all that stuff. I still think the big finale with Peter Cushing jumping onto the table, all of
Yeah.
his own stunts, by the way, all of that stuff, um, and ripping open the curtains and that big battle at the end is just a great action sequence. And I don't think anybody ever did anything as good as that because those two actors together in that very short time, as you say, it's rare that they're together in this. Uh,
Mm.
has that sense of this is something quite special, really. So yeah, easily my favorite Van Helsing. Doesn't ham it up, which certain actors have gone for the full on, as Anthony Hopkins possibly does later
Yeah.
on, in a very fun way. But Cushing he's got that quiet authority, I think, and he's got a degree of warmth, but he gets the business done at the same time. And Christopher Lee is probably the quintessential Dracula. He's probably the one that people
Yeah.
think of first, even though Lugosi, is the most influential. Nobody has copied Lugosi more. Nobody has copied anyone as much as Lugosi's Dracula. But yeah, Christopher is hard to beat, really. Yeah, you watched it recently, Sarah. Had you watched it loads before, or not for a long time?
Not for a long time. Definitely not for a long time. It's one of those ones where I was like, I'm not sure I've seen this. And then when I started watching, it's like, oh God, yeah, I remember. I really love this one. Yeah.
Yeah, and it did, loads of sequels, as we said, which are probably worthy of an episode in their own. But there's some interesting stuff. The next one, after this, Brides of Dracula, has no Dracula because, as it suggests, it's about his disciples. And Christopher Lee didn't want to come back, so it's very much a Van Helsing driven film, the next one, which is cool because you do get more Peter Cushing time.
Yeah.
And it has a really memorable bit where he gets bitten. You're like, well, Van Helsing's been bitten, and he has to cauterize the puncture wounds, and he saves himself. But yeah, the movies after this are terrific. But that's the 58 one. I'd have to say
one
is my favorite. Yeah, I've watched it so many times, and it doesn't age really. It helps, I think, with these things because they're obviously period films, so they don't date in terms of someone wearing flares or whatever. But yeah, hard to beat that one. So Sarah, what have you chosen as your kind of main hot Dracula film action?
My main hot Dracula film action, I've gone a little bit later on this one, and it's recently had an anniversary, I believe, but I've gone for the Bram Stoker Dracula 1992.
Oh yeah,
with Gary Oldman as old Dracula.
Old Drac.
Which basically it does go along the same lines as the Hammer one, pretty much. And I love the fact that I think it's the Hammer one, the Lugosi one, probably many others that I haven't seen, and this 1992 one all goes back. There's kind of a line that Dracula uses early on in the movie that's been used in all of them about the wolves. When he hears the wolves singing, and he's like, the creatures of the night.
Yeah.
There's something about them being music. Yeah, exactly. I love that line. But yeah, it goes along pretty much the same lines as the 58 Hammer version. But it just kind of, it makes it all a little bit more sexier. Obviously, it's the 90s. So they try and sex it up. And they also use like a massive cast as well, don't they, for this? You've got Gary Oldman as Dracula, Winona Ryder, all kind of the faces you were kind of big at the time. You've got Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker doing a really, really dodgy English accent. I mean, Winona Ryder's isn't all that great, is it?
Yeah, it's really fun to watch Keanu. He's stuck with the most boring character imaginable. Is the castle far?
Yeah, you kind of think he'd bring something to it, but yeah, he's made him just as weedy as he is in all the others. Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing. You've got Richard E. Grant as Dr. Seward. He's who becomes one of Lucy's suitors in this. Lucy has about 3 suitors, doesn't she? You've got Carrie Yules, who we mentioned in Saw.
Yeah.
He's Arthur. And then a random kind of Texan kind of turns up.
Quincy the American. You know what? He's left out of most of the adaptation, or at least, the main ones. Quincy the American is, again, another fairly useless character that doesn't do anything much. But yeah, it's an unusual thing to see him in a film. Yeah.
Actually mentioned in it, yeah. He has some good fight scenes.
Yeah.
And you kind of recognise him with his massive, like, handlebar moustache.
He's definitely an American.
Definitely. You got Sadie Frost as Lucy.
Have you noticed how Sadie Frost, who is really good in this, but she spends the whole film having an orgasm, essentially?
Mostly, yeah.
Been ravished by a wolf.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, and Tom Waits as Renfield, who's completely bonkers right from the start. He reminds me of the Lugosi Renfield.
Lugosi Renfield's my favourite. But yeah, that's Tom Waits was an inspired choice, man. That voice.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, no, he was great. But yeah, he's kind of like, a little bit irrelevant because he's like institutionalized from the start.
Yeah.
But you kind of get the fact that Harker's kind of then sent over in his place to go finish the deal, which then gets Dracula over to England. He then kind of gets Lucy, and then he gets to Mina. It's pretty cool. It does have some dodgy, like looking back on it and a recent rewatch and stuff. I think like the effects and stuff are a little bit dodgy for the budget that it had.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, I think that's one of the things I like, because they deliberately, because it's a massive budget, as you said, but their whole thing was or his whole thing, Francis Ford Coppola, was to use no digital effects which were available. He wanted to use only in-camera stuff, so stuff that would have been available.
I suppose that kind of explains it, but
yeah, paintings, lots of matte paintings.
Yeah, yeah. The kind of weird, dodgy flame effect as they go into Dracula's castle is like, oh, seriously bad. And when you see Dracula attacking Lucy in the maze as the wolf, that's really awful as well.
Oh, I see. I love that stuff because I think it reminds me of the old equivalent.
Yeah, to me, that's kind of like, that looks quite dodgy. But I love the way they age Dracula. You know, Gary Oldman is a good looking chap. And he starts off as this wizened, gnarly, really creepy old guy with these like gnarly long fingernails and this really weird like beehive thing going on.
Yeah,
and then as the film, as the film goes on and he gets like fitter and healthier, you know, drinking more blood and stuff of the ladies, he kind of like goes back to a young, handsome chap. But I like the way they start him off just being this wizened old sick elderly person that you wouldn't think would hurt a fly, but you know he's still incredibly creepy. The scenes in the castle with Jonathan Harker of the shadows moving and stuff are really quite creepy.
Yeah, that stuff's fantastic. Yeah,
I think to me that was probably one of the mainstream Dracula films that was around at the time. I mean, I was only 12, 13 at the time, so I kind of lapped all that shit up straight away.
It was a big deal. It was a massive.
It was, yeah,
massive production. Hugely successful. Made loads of money. The makeup that you mentioned is fantastic. It was one of the Oscars. It won. I think it either won costume. It won one of a couple of technical things. Because again, the costumes are incredible.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
And it's the kind, they don't really make that kind of film anymore in that way.
No.
Studio bound stuff. Everything is pretty much in a studio, from what I could tell. Which I suppose brings it closer to Hammer, where they used a huge amount of matte paintings and stuff, and they had very little to work with. Ironically, this time on a massive budget. Yeah, no, it's great. It's just a beautiful film, isn't it?
They put a lot of effort, a lot of thought into it, and a lot of effort, and it had some great soundtracks and all sorts to it. Like you say, it was massive.
Yeah, the score is amazing. It's one of the great horror scores of recent times, and it is because its whole thing was to be closer to the book, which it kind of is. I mean, there's some massive departures, but certainly Renfield being incarcerated as he is, and he's already in there in the book, and it's Harker that goes to thing, and the structure of it is kind of similar up to a point. The sense of it all being, the reincarnation of his old lover is something that's in a few Dracula films. Like it's in I was going to mention it later, but it's in the Jack Palance Dracula from the 70s, uses the Vlad the Impaler connection and makes it much more about his romantic obsession with her. And so does the not the Vlad thing, but the romantic thing is emphasized in the Frank Langella version of the 70s as well. So it's kind of doing that stuff from other adaptations, but there's loads of nods, isn't there, to other Dracula films. There's one scene where he rises from his coffin, which is a direct quote from Nosferatu. Lines, like you said, from the Lugosi film, which have been much copied. Some of it feels more Hammer horror-ish, which is cool. So to me, it's like a greatest hits. Like now, that's what I call Dracula, Volume 92.
Absolutely.
But also, even Keanu Reeves, who I do think is stuck with just an unworkable role. You know, the lines he's got. I don't know what he could have brought to a role that everybody makes boring, and an accent that clearly he can't do. But even him, there is also that sense of, like almost the Hollywood Christmas party where they've chosen to do Dracula that night. Like everyone's here. Oh, where's Winona? We're gonna get, yeah. We're probably gonna make you look like quite a bad actress. Is that okay? Yeah, sure. They're in it to be involved because it's Francis Coppola, and
Yeah.
and it's such a mental mixture of people. Like Anthony Hopkins seems like he's in a different film to Winona Ryder. He's making jokes. Like there's a moment. Do you remember that moment where he says something? I forgot. Is it about Sadie Frost? I can't remember. He says someone asks him, "Oh, what are you going to kill her?" "Oh no, we're just going to chop off her head and put a stake through her heart."
Yeah, but first, I'm hungry. Let's go for dinner or something. I think he says.
A joint of meat. Yeah, and as I said, Sadie Frost is acting like she's in a 70s porno. Yeah, I'm impressed they got
Yeah,
the bestiality scene in a mainstream Hollywood film though of her being shagged
yeah.
by a wolf. So yeah, it's a real odd one. And it'll never happen again because you'll never get those same people in. And it's a snapshot of early 90s Hollywood with, like you said, a rising star. Gary Oldman then, I suppose, was just getting into the bid. He hadn't yet done Leon, so it's quite early in his career.
I
And it's
think
a
he
mad role
does.
for him.
It is absolutely. I think he comes off like the best out of all of them in this as well. It's
Yeah,
like you
he's
say,
truly committed
Winona
to that
doesn't.
role.
Yeah, doesn't do great. She's all right.
Well, she's
Yeah,
miscast, isn't she? Because Radona's really good in a few things, or quite a few things,
yeah.
but this isn't really her bag. She doesn't look like someone from the late 19th century.
No, Richard E. Grant, I think, comes along quite good in this as well.
I would like more Richard E. Grant. Yeah,
Yeah,
as is usually the case,
and
really.
Tom
But
Waits,
Tom
and yeah,
Waits hissing in a cell,
Anthony Hopkins just being batshit.
giving it large. Yeah, he's really fun in that. He's again a very different Van Helsing, a more campy one. He's got that weird moment where he randomly dances with her, doesn't he? As he's explaining something.
Yeah,
It's cool. Yeah, there's some cool bits in it. There's some
yeah.
good gory bits as well. I like the projectile vomiting moment and
Oh
the
yes.
decapitation at the end. Yeah, it's a pretty impressive thing. Did you ever watch because this was big and they were doing all these gothic remakes? Did you watch the Kenneth Branagh Frankenstein that came after this?
Yes, I did. Yes,
I liked that a lot.
that was really good too. Yeah.
We
And for
should
some
do that.
reason, I went through a little bit of a Kenneth Branagh like phase after that. So, I must watch all his films, and wasn't quite as wasn't quite as impressed with the other ones. But it got me into period drama for a while.
Yeah. Oh,
But no,
Frankenstein's
the
definitely the fun
Frankenstein
one.
was great. Yeah, for sure.
That's quite bonkers because it's more serious than this, I think, and it's memorably got loads of shots of him with his shirt off because clearly he'd been working out tremendously to play
Yeah.
the sexy young Victor rather than the crusty old ones you tend to get. Um,
Mm.
and De Niro is the monster, and like everybody from British sitcoms, Richard Briers turns up, John
Yeah.
Cleese is in it.
Yeah.
Um,
Helena Bonham Carter.
yes, yeah, before she became like Tim Burton's twin sister.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always liked that one. They did a few that because this was a hit, and Interview with the Vampire was a massive hit, and they
Hmm.
did things that didn't really work out, like Mary Riley, which was the adaptation of Jekyll and Hyde with Julia Roberts playing an Irish maid,
Oh
um,
God, no, haven't seen that one.
which is proper, where's me Lucky Charms, or um, yeah. But it was an interesting time, and it was amazing as like so I'd have been 14 when this came out, but it's amazing as like that horror fan where there wasn't really any big budget horror films coming out, and suddenly there was.
All of a sudden, yeah.
Suddenly, although admittedly, you watch the behind the scenes stuff at the time and say, well, yes, it's not really a horror film; it's more of a classic love story. Yeah, right. Yeah, keep
Hmm.
keep telling yourself that. Yeah. So Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is a
It's
good
a good
title
one. Yeah,
because
for
it is.
sure.
Well, it's not. But yeah, as opposed to
What
someone
what
else's.
else could you call it? Yeah.
Yeah. It's Wes Craven's New Nightmare. That was the other. There's a whole bunch of those, isn't there?
Absolutely. Didn't Wes Craven do a Dracula film?
Well, he did one of those Wes Craven Presents Dracula films, which is basically he's an executive producer that probably just said, yeah,
Yeah, I'll have something to do with this.
yeah, that's the one with Gerard Butler, Dracula 2000.
Hmm.
Which I don't, did we mention this already? But it's the one where it's got one great joke, which is where Dracula is in a Virgin megastore, which I thought was just the best joke in any Dracula film, and that's the only thing I remember. I don't think it's terrible, but it's yeah, it exists just for that one joke of having him wandering around there. Ah, but yes. So thanks for your choice, Sarah. I mean, we're gonna choose I think three others that we consider to be lofty Dracula films as well, which is actually quite a tough choice, isn't it? It's to whittle it down to
Massively.
three. Um,
Yeah.
so I kind of struggled with this. I do have to. It has to be for me. My first of the three honourable mentions has got to be the Lugosi one, which I watched again recently in 4K as well because I'm in a 4K drive, and it's
I
90
bet
years
that look,
old.
yeah, I bet it looks amazing. I've loved watching like um Blu-ray editions of Night of the Living Dead, you know, anything in black and white and
Yeah,
stuff. It just for some reason the new versions coming out of them and stuff is just making it look amazing.
yeah. They've the 4K which came out this year is astonishing, really. I mean, they've spent universities are kind of their treasured catalog titles because these 30s horror films, you know, massively part of their history, really. Um, and yeah, they spent a fortune on restoring it, and the 4K version has pretty much got rid of every little wobble, every little crackle that was in on the visuals, at least. I think the
Can you
soundtrack
see the
isn't
strings?
perfect. I don't remember seeing anything like that. I don't remember
The
seeing any
strings on the
giveaway.
back.
Yeah, I see. I can't, no, I don't. I don't remember seeing that. It certainly
Wow,
gives
cool.
you an amazing look because the greatest thing about the 1931 Dracula is that first half where it's Renfield in the castle and you get to see all the detail of the massive spider webs and the creatures, the armadillo
Oh
and
yeah, the random armadillos, yes.
all the things that are scurrying around there and the atmosphere of that with the soundtrack that's been restored as best as they can. It's a little fuzzy, but then it's 90 years old and there's only so much they can do, I think, with the sound. But
There isn't really much of a
yeah,
soundtrack, is there?
no, sorry, I mean like the sound,
Oh, I
the general
see.
sound, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so that's yeah, I mean it looked incredible and it's a beautiful film, it really is, and it's probably the most atmospheric out of all Dracula films, especially that first sequence in the castle, which is almost silent. I mean,
Mm.
the famous intro of Lugosi, "Children of the Night," you know, "I never drink wine," all of the classic lines that have been
Yeah.
quoted or spoofed loads of times. But otherwise, a lot of the best bits are the silent bits, which makes sense because it was made just as talkie movies were coming in. You know, this was
Sure.
they were still making silent films when this came out. This was early in 31. So it always annoys me when people say, "Oh, you know, it's a bit stiff and weird, and you know, and stagey." Well, yeah, it's based on a stage play. You know, it wasn't
Yeah.
based on the book; it was based on the stage play that Lugosi appeared in 27. And also, it's 90 years old. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
so it's such a cool film. I do think he's great. I mean, he's something else. Christopher Lee is a massive presence on screen and incredible. But Lugosi is like from another planet. You know, he's
Yeah, he sure
he's
is. He's a presence.
extraordinary, and he's handsome, but you know, I don't know how you describe him. He's attractive, but in a very hard to define way. He wasn't young
Yeah.
when he made it. He was already almost
No.
50 when he became a star, which is obviously unusual in that business. Um, so he's genuinely strange, and
Mm.
that fits really well with the character that kind of hypnotizes women mostly in these films, you know, to come under his spell.
Yeah,
I
that's
do
the thing.
like, yeah, sorry, yeah,
He's creepy, but in a very charming way.
yeah, yeah,
You don't see the threat. You don't see the fangs and stuff like that. He
mm,
just kind of swoops in and kind of commands and takes over. And
yeah, completely, and and it's so powerful and it holds up, and it's unusual as well. He's obviously Gary Oldman dominates the Coppola film and he's fantastic. But often in these things, as we saw with Christopher Lee in the Dracula Hammer films, he's not in the films that much. But Lugosi's in
no,
this quite a lot. You see him walking the streets of London, you know,
Just lets himself into everyone's houses.
He's wandering in to take something from the fridge.
Well, there's none of this vampires need to be invited in the Lugosi one at all. He's literally just swans into your house whenever.
That's it, isn't it? Yeah, and really with these things, they all change the rules. They're all kind of fluctuating. And this was so early on that the rules to the audience were not really established. I mean, there's a degree of that in the book, but they could pretty much do anything, I suppose. Really,
Yeah.
But yeah, he dominates it. It's a good cast. I mean, it does slow down a tad in the mid stretch, but then I think a lot of them do when they have to set up Mina, Lucy, or whoever. I think that's just part of the narrative. But I love the decline of Renfield, who is my favourite Renfield, Dwight Fry.
He's fabulous,
actor. A really interesting actor.
He's so funny. He makes the weirdest noises as well.
It's fun, and the facial expressions. Yeah,
facial expressions are brilliant. He's like a kind of little cheeky chap type thing.
But again, it's like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, the other guy we have to mention in the Lugosi one, if Renfield is not crazy enough, then you've got the orderly, the old chap from Martin, who seems to have appeared to be in the wrong movie.
It's really bizarre.
You get these randomers. Me up. He's like, what is with all these crazy people? We're the only sane ones here. I don't even know why I'm doing that accent. He's got some kind of like, oh, core blimey accent.
Cockney, because they're trying to be Cockney. Yeah, because it's meant to be London. I've never seen. Which part of London is this? Yeah, and you get that with the Universal horror films. You get like odd English in quote marks barmaids. Oh, like blimey, strike a light.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. Wait a minute, this is a soundstage in Hollywood, isn't it? Yeah, those
fantastic. He just keeps popping up in random times just to come up with some little quote or something. It's just so out of place. It's hilarious.
It's great, isn't it? It's just fantastic. I think it's great, and it's I think considering everything, I always liked the same is true of the Frankenstein. Frankenstein came out the same year, but at the other end of the year with Karloff as the monster. And Frankenstein tends to be the one that people love much more than this one nowadays. Obviously, this was the one that started it all. But Frankenstein is, Frankenstein's got, I suppose, more going on. Frankenstein is shot through with more humor, and it was made later, so things have got more sophisticated with how they recorded dialogue and things like that. So it doesn't feel as stiff. But I think the stiffness is part of the charm of this one, and I also think the lack of the music, which, as you said earlier, there's no music in Frankenstein either, except for the titles where they use classical stuff. And this is I think it's Swan Lake. But I think that adds, especially because I think the alternative, really, especially in 1930s, would be to have some kind of dan dan da, some kind of Dracula, which possibly with the very broad performances of people like Dwight Fry may have just made it more laughable now. Whereas
it would have been more comedic. Yeah, it has
that eeriness, especially in the horror scenes, especially in the castle.
Absolutely, you really notice it, you really feel it.
Yeah, and you do get as they've kind of remastered the sound over the years, you do get to hear more of the kind of sound effects, I guess, the wind and stuff.
Yeah, true.
So I think that's entirely part of why it works so well.
Yeah, because we're so used to hearing like the soundtracks and the scores going on, and you really notice when it's not there.
Well, yeah, and the two we've talked about so far, Bram Stoker's Dracula has a massive score. It's the entire Prague Philharmonic. Dun 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 dun, and the famous
same with the Harrow
Dracula. Yeah, constant. Massive, big action music in the Hammer one. So the other thing, of course, with this one is that which again I actually really like. The big finale is basically off camera, and you hear which is Dracula being stage.
Yeah, and then it's the most abrupt ending as well, isn't it? And the Lugosi one. It's the same with the beginning as well, though. It literally just jumps straight in, and then at the end, it's like the end, done. Like say, off screen,
the castle.
The end. Yeah,
we haven't got time for this shit. Let's get out of here. Yeah. And I can only, I mean, I don't know. I mean, because again, it's based on a stage play, so I presume on stage it would have been tricky to stage that. Also on film, I'm guessing they probably wouldn't have been allowed to show much anyway, so you wouldn't see it going in, as they say in all good adult films.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I think that's always been cited as a reason for people to diss this a little bit. But for me, it's 1931. Horror movies didn't really exist in Hollywood at that time. So
Yeah,
they
you don't
sort
need
of
to build it
pioneer.
up or string it out at the end. It is what it is.
Exactly,
It's
yeah.
the
And
beginning, middle, end,
it's in that
done.
period. Yeah, it doesn't hang about,
No, I
which
like that
that's yeah,
approach
especially now. Like now,
for
everything's over
sure.
2 hours. Why are you making a two and
Why?
a half hour film called Pirates of the Caribbean? Why is it 2.5 hours? It's a 90-minute story at best. Yeah, so the bullshit of current films where they're all too long really highlights, I think, the Hammer one. And even, well, actually, Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Coppola film, is 2 hours long, but it's got constant stuff
Yeah,
going on. There's Tom Waits going off his tree.
sure.
Richard E. Grant showed up, so I think that's an exception. But yeah,
Yeah, you don't quite notice how long it is.
no, it's busy, isn't it? It's very busy.
Mm.
There's always something to look at. So yeah, so Lugosi Dracula, 1931. It's a big year for it. 90 years. I always like revisiting it. It always makes me smile with the with the Renfield and the grunt at the end and the character you mentioned.
Martin, we love Martin.
But
Freaking love him.
there's always one of those. Just as Hammer always had a doddery old character that in between
And
the
the
horror
same in
stuff.
like Friday the 13th and stuff. There's always that one
Oh,
comedy character.
you don't want to go
That's
there.
Martin.
Yes, yeah, and that's massively a part of a charm. Michael Ripper in Hammer films, when you watch or rewatch the Hammer films, he pops up as landlord or something. Where is it you going? Castle Dracula.
You don't want to go there.
Yeah, not this time of year. Um, yeah, and then it became Crazy Ralph. Going to Camp Blood, are you?
I just
Um,
love characters like that. He's great. He's like the master.
yeah, fantastic. So that's the old classic Dracula 31. Led to many sequels like the Hammer films, but it is
It's a good mention. Definitely a very good mention.
What's your next
My,
one?
my mention's kind of pale in comparison, but I just have to mention them because that's what we're doing.
It's a mention after all.
Exactly. My first one I'm going to go for is a little bit of a curveball because it's not exactly just about Dracula, but it has a lot of Dracula in it. It's the Monster Squad.
Ah, the Monster Squad. Yes.
It's friggin' awesome. He's kind of a strange Dracula in the Monster Squad, isn't he?
I haven't seen it for a long time, but yes, I think I remember.
Yes,
Yeah.
he's definitely very evil. He also has like a lot those because it's a kind of a kids film, really. It has a lot of comedic value to it, but it has a little bit of everything.
It's a
Dracula,
nice film, isn't it?
Gilman, Frankenstein's monster. It is a
Yes.
nice film, and it's one that I can revisit over and over again, and I do. I haven't watched it recently in the last 6 months,
Yeah,
but it's still one that you've got. It's a great introductory one for kids as well.
it
Because
is. Yeah.
Dracula's scary, but he's not too scary. He still has the
Yeah.
fangs and the cape and the makeup, and
Sure.
he's
And
great.
it's made in because it's in that part of the 80s thing where clearly the guys that grew up watching the monster movies that we just spoke about on TV, Hammer
Yeah,
and Universal, were now making films, and this is their love letter to those films, which I always think there's massive
absolutely.
affection in those films. There's a documentary, isn't there? I don't know if you.
Mhm.
It was shown maybe at Fright Fest years ago, but it still hasn't come out. I don't think, called Wolfman's Got Nards,
Yeah,
which is all about the Monster Squad, and I've wanted to see it for ages, but it doesn't seem to be available anywhere. But yeah, it needs a release. As does Monster Squad. Really, I don't think it's out on
it's
Blu-ray or even here.
Oh
Or even
no, that's the
DVD
thing.
actually.
No, we need to get that sorted out. No, I think is it Andre Gower, he was one of the child actors
Oh
in the
yeah,
film. He appears massively in all sorts of horror documentaries and stuff.
Yeah,
Just going on about, the fact, he's such a fan of
yeah,
various the horror genre as such, and he has a massive love for the Universals and Hammer Draculas and stuff. He's always about.
yeah, and that's great, isn't it? Because that just reinforces the warm glow the film has anyway, I think.
Sure.
Isn't it? It's been so long, but it is right. It is Tom Noonan that plays the Frankenstein monster.
It is, yes.
He's great.
He's fantastic, especially as Frankenstein's monster in this. He's really sweet.
Yeah, that's a gift of a character as well. Is it? All sorts of people have played him, obviously, over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tom Noonan. Big fan of Tom Noonan. Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's
Squad.
Yeah. Not too much more to say on the Dracula on that, to be fair, but it's just a great, fun family type, along the same lines as the Hammer horror type thing. He's all about the fangs and the scary hand movements and the swishing of the cape and stuff. You're not ripping people's face off and biting their necks. I don't think he actually bites anyone in the movie, but
yeah, it's
he definitely has the look. He's kind of a combination of Christopher Lee and Bela Lugosi.
Yeah, which are or were and still are the two that
the main
people
ones,
quote
the ones
most,
that yeah.
Because everything else, that's the interesting thing, isn't it, about either of those, is that even the great ones, everything else that came after those two owes a debt to them. So Gary Oldman is using bits and pieces of a few, definitely Lugosi and the accent and degree of charming Christopher Lee, I guess. But otherwise, most things after those are all a kind of tribute in some way, even if not totally, even if they're doing their own thing, they're always there in some way.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Yeah. The Monster Squad. Good shout there. It was really the one I'm choosing now as my second honorable mention. I kind of wanted to have as my favorite, but then it would be rudely ousting the Hammer, because the Hammer has to be top. So the one I really love as well is Blood for Dracula, also known as Andy Warhol's Dracula from 1974, I think, 73, 74. Andy Warhol didn't really have much to do with it, but it is kind of some of his people that made it, or his hangers-on. And this and Flesh for Frankenstein were made like back to back, I think, with Udo Kier as the lead in each.
Yeah. And he's lovely. He's great. He's a great Dracula, I think.
This is I watched this this morning because I got it recently, and I was desperate to watch it, and I thought, I better watch it for this anyway. And it's such a fantastic piece of work. It's totally bonkers, and it's really lovely. I mean, it's strangely touching, even though a lot of it is kind of played for laughs. It's got people saying things like, "Oh, Dracula! The sound of that name is so intriguing. 3 syllables. I like that name." Never heard of many people with the Eula as the end of their surname. But it's also a sad story of old Dracula. I mean, the very first scene is him in a wheelchair, putting makeup on with this sad piano music. The first kind of scene, the first close up is of Udo Kier's beautiful green eyes. And he's a guy that, especially in the 70s, strikingly handsome. And you look at some early pictures of Lugosi, and there's a real resemblance there.
Definitely the slicked back hair, and definitely
yes,
going for that kind of look.
And the features are kind of extraordinary, and he's still obviously he's aged extraordinarily well. He still has all of that. And yeah, the first scene is him as the camera pans out while he's putting makeup on. You see that his hair is grey, so then he paints his hair black. And the most depressing thing of all is this long scene at the very start where he's going to this effort to make himself look, not old. Is the reveal that he's looking into a mirror with no reflection, which I don't think was meant to be a joke, because it just struck me as really sad. But again, it may well have been an entire joke. But the main premise is hilarious in a way, which is basically he's old, he's desperate. The only way he can not die in the next couple of weeks is to get a virgin, which they've run out of in Romania, apparently.
Damn it.
Because of their accents, him and his assistant Anton, this very charming and weird, dapper assistant, they pronounce it virgins, so they're looking for virgins. And they decide that the best thing to do, we're going to go to Italy because the Catholic
it's where
Church,
all
they
the
always need
virgins are.
virgins for weddings. And that's the only hope. So they dash off, and there's a lot of funny scenes of when they get there, of Dracula moaning about the food. They've not got the right vegetable. He's brought some Romanian lettuce with him. And
What?
exactly. And there's a rich family that's totally gone to seed, and he gets an invite there, and they've got 4 daughters. Awkwardly, even though they're clearly played by people that are in their 20s, one of them's 14, and the handyman, who's played by Joe D'Alessandro at his dishiest, is busy basically shagging his way through all of the daughters. So it's almost, even though the film's quite laid back, it's almost a race against time for Dracula to, marry one of the daughters before they've lost their virginity to this handyman shagging them all. It's just fantastic. I mean, it's quite broad. It's got a lot of kind of cue card style acting from the local people who I guess, obviously speaking in a language that isn't their first one. And it's got the usual scenes of them going to the pub, which in this case is even weirder than the Hammer pubs. It's
right.
But it's also shot through with kind of sadness, like Dracula's really sick, and Udo Kier plays it for the humor about, Italians, they put too much oil on everything for the food, to scenes where he's just got all these body spasms because if he doesn't get the virgin blood, he's seriously sick, he's dying. But yeah, Blood for Dracula is fantastic. It ends in a kind of Monty Python fashion where Joe D'Alessandro has shagged everybody and basically hacks his limbs off one by one, like that scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So Dracula is kind of just a stump. But yeah, it's bonkers, but it is a really beautiful film, and there's nothing else like it. There really isn't. And the same is true of the Frankenstein one, which is off the chain and much gorier actually. But yeah, this Blood for Dracula is, I think, one of my all-time favorites, man.
Oh.
Check it out. Udo Kier is the best.
Yeah. Looking at pictures, I've not actually seen this.
Oh man, you have to watch it.
I know. I wanted to watch it, but I ran out of time to watch it here. But yeah, looking at the pictures and stuff, it looks great.
It's a really weird one. I mean, if you're watching it for the first time, I've seen it years ago a few times, but this was my first watch for a while. But it's just strange. Yeah, you're often not sure. I mean, you can tell some things are meant to be genuinely funny, and there's scenes of people going, "Oh, he's very pale, but he's probably a vegetarian." Obviously in an Italian accent. And it's got a whole weird thing where the shaggy Joe D'Alessandro character is constantly kind of banging the drum for socialism, because it's early 70s. But yeah, it's tremendous, I think.
And he looks so young. I know you're saying, like in this, he's supposed to be really ill and stuff, but compared to Lugosi and Christopher Lee and stuff, he looks like he's definitely one of the younger Dracula.
Yeah, and he must have been. I guess he was in his 30s for this because it was 73. He's not as old as either of those at all. So yeah, and it's just a really cool spin on the idea of, in this case, Dracula could only keep going despite being immortal with a regular supply of virgin blood. And if he has non-virgin blood, if they've tricked him, or if Joe D'Alessandro has already shagged them, not him, then he gets violently sick. So yeah,
it's kind of scary. Kind of makes him a little bit more, I don't know, a bit more human in a strange way.
Yeah, very vulnerable. Yeah, you feel sorry for him in this, but wait till you see his assistant, who's totally bonkers. There's a lot of eyebrow acting going on.
Oh, amazing! I like the sound of that. I need to see that.
He deserves a film of his own. He's kind of maybe part Renfield,
part Martin.
Yeah, I guess he's a bit of everything. He is that character. He's totally mad. He's the one procuring the virgins, and he goes up to the 14-year-old at one point. Yeah, oh, you're a lovely girl, aren't you? Because he's obviously grooming her to be a possible
victim.
Oh, your daughter is very pretty. How old is she? Yeah,
just creepy, awkward. Bless him.
It was the 70s. What's your next one, Sarah?
Oh, my next one. Well, from one handsome Dracula to another handsome Dracula.
Handsome.
This was a TV series with Jonathan Rhys-Meyers playing Dracula. Did you catch this? It was 2013. You didn't?
I did.
I was obsessed with this. It only did one season.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. This was kind of the time before. I don't know if you ever remember Penny Dreadful. They kind of swapped it up and cancelled the Dracula for the Penny Dreadful series with Eva Green. But yeah, before that, we kind of had a backstory to the Penny Dreadful by going for this with Jonathan Rhys-Meyers as Dracula, and I absolutely loved this. I thought it was great for like a kind of mini series. I think it was on the BBC. I'm not entirely sure. Oh, it says it says its original network was Sky. I think I would have had Sky then. I obviously watched it on Sky by the looks of things. But yeah, it was kind of sexy and dangerous and bloody, and he's just smoking hot as Dracula. Definitely like going for the Lugosi Christopher Lee thing for sure.
So is he in the modern day?
Yes. Well, no, I'm trying to think. No, it is still set in 1800s London. Still set. It's still set then. Yeah. I think it's been a while since I watched it. I'd love to watch it again, to be fair. I'm trying to think how closely it kind of follows along with like the Hammer and the 90s version. I think it's very loosely based on them. You still have your Mina Murray, your Lucy characters and stuff, but they tend. Oh, Jonathan Harker in this is more of a hero type. He's less of a wet lettuce than he has been in previous.
Cool.
I'm trying to think who played him. I'm trying to look it up as I'm talking about it. But yeah, I absolutely loved this. I thought it was fantastic, especially considering it was a series. I really, really would have hoped that it would have gone on for longer than it did. And the 2020 Dracula series they did on the BBC absolutely bombed something chronic, didn't it?
I did watch that. Yeah. What did you think of that one?
The first two episodes were fantastic, and I remember we were talking about it at the time, going, "Oh my god, this is going to be amazing! Right. This is going to be brilliant! Oh my god, I can't wait till the third one." And the third episode was absolutely shite.
It was the modern one, wasn't it? Where they went to modern day. Yeah, that was embarrassing.
Yeah.
Because it was going in a good direction. I quite like the twist. What was the twist with Van Helsing? It was her, wasn't it? It was the
she was the nun.
Lady. The nun, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which I
she was
really good. Yeah, like great granddaughter, yeah.
Yeah. The 2013 one had Oliver Jackson Cohen, who I believe has been in quite a few other things. Oh, he's in The Invisible Man and a few things like that. Gone on to do other things. He was Jonathan Harker, and I think he was more of a hero character in this. You had your Renfield character, who's completely different. He's this big black guy in the series. It was really cool. I remember thinking, I'm definitely enjoying this. There was some good effects, and the vampires and stuff. I think he had like a whole horde of them that he kept down like in the sewers and stuff. They were pretty cool.
It does sound quite good, actually. So it wasn't like toned down as far as horror goes. It was
definitely not. Right. It was quite in your face. I think it is available to buy on Prime. It's 10 episodes, all ranging for about 45 minutes an episode. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought that was good. Definitely of the newer things that have come up since.
Yeah, they bring it. Well, it's always going to be revived, isn't it? Dracula is constantly for a TV show. They did a BBC one with Mark Warren, I think, a few years ago, which was probably quite a few years ago actually, which was kind of emphasizing the syphilis angle, which didn't quite work. And I was really hopeful for the Mark Gatiss one, which we just mentioned, the 3-parter that was from 2020, because it started off so well.
So good.
And then it went to
Tosh. Yeah. could have just done with the first two episodes. But yeah, I feel like this 2013 one, had they done another season, it had potential to go downhill. So I'm kind of glad, as sad as I was at the time, that they didn't renew it for another season. It's probably best that they didn't and left it as they did.
Sometimes,
but yeah. Jonathan Rhys-Meyers is a very good Dracula. I like him a lot.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah, I'll check that out one day. Thanks, Sarah. Next one. Oh, it's tricky, isn't it? Well, I had two. Well, yeah, I'm going to choose the Jack Palance Dracula, actually, from 1974, as my next honorable mention. I really like this one, and it doesn't get as much attention as it deserves. I think it might be on Prime for free, maybe. It was for a while, at least, anyway. But it's really good. I mean, Jack Palance, maybe not the first person you think of for Dracula.
No. For sure.
But it really works. I mean, he's from memory, he doesn't overdo the accent. He does. I think he attempts a kind of muted, maybe Lugosi-ish accent. And it's, but he's good because he's got. If you think of Jack Palance, he's got kind of the look of a bit like a reptile in human form. So it gives him just look a bit like a lizard. So it gives him a kind of animal quality to this, and it's very much about this. Is the most animal moments of Christopher Lee in the Hammer one, amped up further in this one, and he's a bit like Christopher Lee, I guess. He's got some big action bits where he's flinging women around like they're dolls, and I suppose, and there's more use of his transformation powers into wolves and stuff. But it's really atmospheric. It gets rid of some dead wood, so there's no Dr. Seward, there's no Quincy, there's no Renfield in this one either. So it's quite pared down, but it does have Jonathan Harker. It does a bit of the Coppola one, so it emphasizes the romance more than Hammer does, but not to the degree where it's got boring. It does the connection to Vlad the Impaler as well. So whether or not Coppola got that idea from there or not, maybe, who knows? It is a compendium of kind of things from other films, I guess. But it's pretty large scale. So it's one of the few Dracula films that goes to Whitby, although it's probably not Whitby. It goes to a very convincingly miserable, cold England. There's a bit at Scarborough Zoo where, it's got one of those typical Hollywood Scarborough people that are, here, can't you read the blooming signs? One of those people. Bloody hell.
Nice.
Because that's definitely Scarborough. That's really, that's definitely Scarborough. And it's just quite good. Van Helsing is Nigel Davenport, who's quite good. He's not one of the classics, but he's still good. And there's some really good horror scenes. I think that's the thing. This is one of those things, if you caught it when you're a certain age, a bit like things like Salem's Lot, it could stay with you. So there's a scene with Dracula seems to command a small army of wolves, and it's probably just two, I can't remember. So there's wolves crashing through windows. There's a really creepy bit where you see Lucy's corpse, I seem to remember. And there's also a bit where dead Lucy, a bit like in the later Salem's Lot, actually, dead Lucy is knocking or at least begging at the window for Arthur to let her in. And it's very creepy because of how Lucy is played. Jack Palance is great though, and he's really powerful in it, and he's almost like Dracula. You think he may even come out and say it at one stage, but you get the feeling that he's out for world domination, not just biting a few people on the neck. He's got that kind of thing going on, and there's stuff going on. There's people on horseback, a bit like the ending of the Coppola Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula. It feels a bit like a Western because you've got people on horseback heading to Castle Dracula to go and get him. And I always like that one. It's just called Dracula. Well, I think, funnily enough, some prints of it have the title Bram Stoker's Dracula on this one, which is a bit confusing, but it's from 1974 and directed by Dan Curtis, who did Dark Shadows back in the day and The Night Stalker. But I always like that one. It's a little underrated, but just check it out if it ever pops up somewhere.
Yeah, we'll do.
Nice. What was your next one, Sarah? Oh, this is the third one, isn't it? Wow.
This is my third one. This is my last one. I've saved the best one till last because I know you're going to hate this.
It can't be.
I rewatched it today and I'm like, I still really like this movie, but I don't actually know anyone else that likes this movie. But my third honourable mention is Van Helsing, the one with Hugh Jackman from 2004 that everyone seems to hate. I don't hate it. I really like it. I'm sorry. Why do I like? I think it's again. It's the actors, man. It's Hugh. It's Hugh Jackman and the dude that plays Dracula as well. I think he's an amazing like Dracula character. The way he's made up and stuff. I think he really looks the part for sure. He's going for kind of a long hair look more than anything. But no, I do really like it. It's silly and it's stupid and okay, some of the CGI is a little bit dodgy, but it has a little bit of everything. It's got Dracula in it, obviously. It doesn't really go down the lines of any of the Bram Stoker ones. It kind of tries to go back to his history, kind of saying that this Van Helsing character is like part of Dracula's past. He killed Dracula in the past and now he's come back to kind of like get him, although Van Helsing has no memory of this. He's now been kind of reinvented as this monster killer. So you have Dr. Jekyll in it. He's first hunting him. Who's the guy that plays him? It's an English.
Oh, it's not. Is it Jason Fleming or is he the one?
No, no, it's Robbie Coltrane.
Oh wow,
Robbie Coltrane is. And it has like a whole like black and white thing at the beginning going over the fact that Dracula worked with Victor Frankenstein and created this monster. He wanted the monster created to help him bring his children to life. So if Frankenstein can create a human, bring back the dead, then hopefully this undead being will help bring his children to life who are obviously born dead. There's like, that's the bit that you're kind of like, well, this is a bit weird because obviously he's got his 3 vampire brides and they've laid these kind of like giant gooey egg sacs and stuff. They're kind of trying to make it a little bit sci-fi and stuff. That is a bit weird and I'm a little bit like, don't really buy that kind of situation. But it's loads of action and I don't know why I like it, but I just do. Sorry, I watched an absolutely awful Dracula film today, one that I hadn't seen called Dracula 3D. I was like, oh, it's directed by Dario Argento. I'll watch that. Fucking hell, man. That was so bad. So bad. I was like, how can people slag Van Helsing off as much and then, go, oh yeah, that was all right. It's not one of his best movies. I'm like, seriously, it was made. When was that made? 2013. Yeah, the fucking effects are horrendous. If the CGI effects are bad in Van Helsing that was made in 2004, then what the hell's going on with the ones in there?
It's got like, those CGI wolves and praying mantis.
The praying mantis.
Is there a CGI owl in that or something?
Yes, right at the beginning.
Christ,
there's a CGI everything. And the Dracula is dull, so dull.
And
in the Argento one,
because I was looking forward to it because Rutger Hauer's Van Helsing, but he's got very little to do, hasn't he?
Very little to do, yeah. He's kind of the only good thing about it. But yeah, the guy that plays Dracula, Thomas Kretschmann, who actually appears in the Dracula series that I've just mentioned, the one with Jonathan Rhys-Meyers as Van Helsing, and he's really good in that. But in this as Dracula, he's awful.
Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? Argento totally lost it somewhere along the line.
Absolutely.
With his last few films.
So yeah, I'm championing Van Helsing definitely over that.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I suppose
if there's anyone out there that likes Van Helsing, please let me know. I'd love to talk to you about it.
Yeah, you guys could get together and
do our own little fan club. Yeah, sure. Just the 2 of us.
They're out there. I mean, the movie was.
I hope so.
I think it was a hit at the time. It was an expensive movie that had a massive release. No, that's fair enough. And you're almost certainly right that Dracula 3D is probably a far worse film.
Absolutely.
It is. I remember watching Dracula 3D. I was kind of looking forward to it. Like, what, Dracula, Dario Argento? How bad could it be? And you get to play Dario.
Bad is the answer.
Did you play Dario Argento Bingo? And as soon as you saw my own daughter topless in a film again, tick.
Yeah,
It's not at all weird.
Full House. Oh God, yeah, she tried her best, didn't she, in that? But she does not suit a period costume for starters. She does not look right.
No.
And the girl that played Mina was awful as well. So dull.
I remember Alan Jones when we went to Fright Fest once. Alan Jones, being one of the hosts and organisers, was a massive Argento fan, and is in fact like written books about him and is big friends with him. And he was discreetly trying to tell us that, not Dracula, because I didn't see that at Fright Fest, but he was discreetly trying to tell us that. Well, he was embarrassed to introduce one of the films. I think it was Giallo, the film Giallo, which is terrible, far worse than Dracula 3D. And that was quite amusing. But also, he told a tale of how they, at one stage when the making of Dracula 3D, they lost Rutger Hauer for a couple of days, and they found him from memory. This is the story from memory. They found him like 2 days after he's supposed to be on set, possibly longer. They found that he'd been kind of lurking somewhere and shagging some much younger Romanian girl that he'd picked up. So he'd eloped off rather than do the part. Maybe that's why he's not in it much, I suppose.
Yeah, maybe they had trouble tracking him down. Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. It's like, this film is fucking shit. Please get me out of here. I'll find something else to do with my time.
And ironically, Dracula 3D is funnier than the not that funny Leslie Nielsen Dracula Dead and Loving It, which has 2 laughs.
No, I still prefer that. No, definitely prefer that to bloody Dracula 3D. God, I'm sure there is still worse ones out there. I mean, there's so many, isn't there? If you pop Dracula into Prime, which is what I have done recently, I have had so much stuff come up. I was like, I don't actually have the time or the patience to watch all of these to actually know which ones are out of this lot are going to be any good, especially the recent ones.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The recent. Yeah. There was the one that came out with Luke Evans, Dracula, right? No, Dracula Untold. Is that the one? That looks rubbish.
That's the one that keeps popping up. That do I want to check it out or not?
It's another CGI thing.
It does look dull even from the artwork on the for the front cover.
And everything is made these days. Everything is made, including that, is made as kind of like almost like the pilot to a TV series that thankfully never happened.
Sure.
It's like, let's launch another action hero franchise. Oh, it's Dracula. Total cack. Otherwise, I mean, there's ones we haven't mentioned. There's a crap Dracula in Blade Trinity, the worst of the Blade films.
Sure. Yeah.
Which I always thought was bad. Definitely worse than the Van Helsing Dracula. Gerard Butler we mentioned. There's some great ones along the way. There's some odd ones like the other time that Christopher Lee played Dracula away from Hammer was in a film called Count Dracula, where Klaus Kinski is Renfield and it's Herbert Lom is Van Helsing. That's quite a strange one. And Christopher Lee did it because he got to play Dracula kind of as the old man that he is in the book, white hair and a kind of walrus moustache. So that's quite interesting. It's very slow and strange and not that exciting, but it's quite an interesting alternative to the Christopher Lee Dracula in the Hammer films. There's the remake of Nosferatu is good, the 70s one with Klaus Kinski as the vampire. I always liked that one. He's actually called Count Dracula in that one from memory as well. So whereas the first one couldn't flout copyright, this one could because the book was in public domain. So that's a really good one. Any other Dracula films that you kind of like or you remember?
No, not off the top of my head. Not any ones that are massively standing out. I mean, there's been so many. I've kind of gone off on a tangent from like Dracula films to just any kind of like vampire related movies. They seem to be getting better. The Dracula movies seem to be getting worse, don't they?
Yeah.
But well, if you ignore a few like Twilight and stuff like that, there are some other like amazingly good vampire related movies that go along the lines of more of like the Nosferatu type thing. There's so many things coming up now that are trying to like make vampires scary again.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
like we were talking Yeah, we were talking before the recording about 30 Days of Night being a modern vampire film that actually, puts the bejesus back into vampires again. You've got From Dusk Till Dawn, which is hilarious, but also quite scary with some great vampire monsters.
Yeah.
Fright Night, back to the 80s, Fright Night, Lost Boys, stuff like that. You mentioned Interview with a Vampire.
Yeah.
That's kind of romantic. And then we've got all these new, like What We Do in the Shadows, the movies and the series that are coming out from that. They were great. I'm more interested in that kind of stuff at the moment, and it seems, like I say, it's definitely making a comeback because we have a kind of variation of vampires mentioned in the American Horror Story new season that I've just started watching. There's kind of a vampire thing going on Netflix in Midnight Mass.
Yeah,
it's slowly trying to come back.
Yeah,
so
Midnight
I don't
Mass
know.
is very good.
Yeah, I don't quite know how they're going to do it. If they're going to do any more Dracula, do you think there is room for expansion on the Dracula take on things this day and age?
Yeah, I think these things always come round. Like we said before, with different things. Like there'll always be another Body Snatchers movie, or there'll always be another Frankenstein movie. There'll always be that, and typically they kind of go around every couple of decades, where like a big studio will do a big budget one, which is what happened with Coppola in the 90s and the 70s. The big one was the Frank Langella one in 79, which actually is another one I really like. That was a big budget do. So yeah, absolutely. There'll always be something in development, even the ones that don't make it to the screen. Like they were doing a Wolfman, so I think they were going to reboot that again. But there's always stuff going on. They tried it recently. That was intended to be a big revival of the monsters, just like Van Helsing was with the absolutely dog shit Tom Cruise The Mummy, which was one of the worst films I saw that year. And the only reason that there's a particularly crap Russell Crowe appearing as Henry Jekyll was because they were going to do a Jekyll film, and
luckily that didn't happen.
But I think what has survived, I'm sure, what's his name? Ryan Gosling was going to do a Wolfman film, which there's one of them that I think is still being developed out of the ashes of what was going to be what I think they were calling embarrassingly the Universal Monster Universe or something crap like that. But yeah, these things will come back because at least some of them have made a lot of money over time. So
sure. Do you think there's anyone out there? Is there anyone out there, do you think, that would make a good Dracula now that would be as memorable as Christopher Lee?
Well, do you know what, Sarah? Do you know what? I actually do. And no, it's not me, because I'm totally miscast, far too slender. I think the one I'd like to see out of anyone I can think of, Richard Gere's too old, so I can't choose him, even though he's my hero. It would be, sorry, Richard, he's still out there helping refugees, would be Mads Mikkelsen. That's my Dracula. That's who I want to see.
Oh my God, that is! I would never have even thought of that, but that is.
I hadn't until you asked me the question. To be honest,
that is a freaking good call, my friend. I'm with you on that. Oh yes.
I mean, he's great. He's got everything. He's the right age, I think. Not that ages massively. He can change, you can make up and stuff, but not just based on Hannibal Lecter either. Based on loads of things he's done. He's a fantastic actor in a range of roles. But yeah, he's got the sex element, the real menace.
An accent.
The accent is, yeah, absolutely, and just the sense that, like with, I suppose even, well, Christopher Lee's very larger than life, and Gary Oldman is in the other one, but yeah, Mads is almost like he's not of this earth as well. He's extraordinary. So,
wow, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there may well be, somebody like Mads that's being tapped for a Dracula film or project, sometime soon. Because I think it will always come back, and we're due a really good one. So I've got quite good faith that there will be, another really good one coming along, like the Coppola one did in the 90s.
Yeah, and he should definitely, we're putting his name down on the petition. Mads for Dracula, for sure.
Mads for president. Yeah, exactly. And
Wow,
that's
that's
proven, I
really cool.
suppose, by the Mark Gatiss thing as well. You know, they did the mini series, even though it wasn't great. I'm sure it probably did really well.
Mm.
So I think these things, yeah, they'll spin round and come back. But go Mads, yeah, come on, Mads,
Yeah, absolutely.
get
Well,
going.
that's blown that out of the water for sure. I asked that question. I was like, I wouldn't have a clue, but yeah, now I'm definitely up for that.
Yeah, there's probably others that would be decent,
Yeah,
but I think
Killian
he's
Murphy, but
come to mind.
he's kind of gone
He's
kind of in
interesting.
the other direction. Yeah, the look, his look, the cheekbones, the eyes, definitely.
Yeah,
But I can't actually see him actually pulling it off.
maybe he has a great screen presence. Yeah, maybe, maybe not. Yeah, I'm not sure with him. Because they're doing there's different things coming, isn't there? Like I thought, the idea of the Blade remake or whatever it is, the new version of Blade with Mahershala Ali is a really good choice because he's a really strong actor as well.
Hmm.
So I'm totally on board with that as far as similar things go that are being remade. And I think it's the right time to do a new Blade film because I like the first two Blade films a lot,
Yeah.
and I think it's kind of got overlooked as being a really interesting Marvel property that now people don't think of as being, you know, a Marvel thing.
No.
Um, and it's grown up. You know, it's more kind of adult pitched, and it's more interesting, I think, than some of their franchise stuff. But yeah, Dracula.
Cool. That's definitely, yeah, I like that idea. Mads for Dracula for sure.
We can make that happen. We've got some
Sure.
strings we can pull,
Yeah.
uh, you never know. Yeah, it was it's a parting shot. Were you a Buffy fan? I can't remember.
Oh yeah, yeah. Not as much as you,
It was a Buffy
but
versus
for
Dracula episode. Did you watch that one?
I don't think so. It doesn't spring instantly to mind. Who was Dracula in that?
I've
Or
forgotten
how did
his
that
full
play out?
name. Rupert something. I think he played Dracula in a film as well, either before or after. So he's definitely played Dracula twice. Um,
Okay.
I think literally it was a season opener. I think it was series 5. Dracula came to Sunnydale. I think that was you know, that was kind of the
Okay.
setup.
Yeah.
And
Looking it up now. Season
yeah,
5, episode 1, Buffy versus Dracula.
because he's the ultimate vampire, she's the chosen slayer, so it
Sure.
all made sense. What's particularly good about that episode is that Xander becomes a very amusing Renfield. Because
I
he
could
gets
see him doing that. Yeah.
and he's perfectly cast as the Renfield of that episode and eating bugs and, you know, being the ridiculous obedient servant to the Prince of Darkness. So that worked super well. Um, yeah, it was good. It was good fun. It wasn't taken massively seriously, uh, you know, because it's Buffy, so it's jokey anyway.
Mhm.
But yeah, I really like that one. Um, Sesame Street count. So,
Sure, absolutely. I was going to put him in. He was on my list as one of my favourite Draculas. Love the Count. He's one of the first Draculas.
and
One.
he's yeah, well, and exactly, and that's the Lugosi accent, and
I
so the great
want
thing
to suck
about
your
that,
blood.
exactly. The awesome thing is that kids everywhere kind of know that's the voice of Dracula, even though they've probably not watched the Lugosi Dracula, but it kind of is in a way because that's where it comes from,
Sure.
which I think
Love him.
is how he survived. Yeah. Well, that was Dracula, Sarah. It was nice going through
Yay.
Dracula's, wasn't it?
Yeah, I learned
Some good
a
ones.
lot more Dracula movies out there that I need to watch
Yeah, definitely
and
starting
many
with
to avoid.
Judo Kier. That's the one to
Sure.
go for. That's something special. And then the Frankenstein one, which is coming out actually. The Udo Kier Frankenstein is coming out in a 4K next week, I think. My
Oh,
God, it's going to be
nice.
expensive.
Exciting. Just
Yes.
before Christmas, just what we need.
God damn it. It's bastards. Yeah, they know that as well. That's why they're doing it. Yeah.
Exactly. That's why they do these things. But yeah, next month is Christmas month.
Yes, Christmas is coming and geese getting fat and all that. And
Yeah.
for next month, we'll be actually coming. I think our episode is due at the very end of December, so it'll be a kind of post-Christmas, pre-New Year treat. And in the festive season, though, Sarah, we're doing something that's proper good for spooky, old, wintry December, which
Yes.
is ghost stories, in particular for our December episode, we're going to be focusing on the 2 screen versions of The Woman in Black, which is the 89 ITV version shown over here on Christmas Eve in 1989. Oh, shudder at the memory. Yes, I was shitting myself. And less shitting myself, but the later version with Sir Daniel Radcliffe, which was a big hit for, actually, coincidentally, the revival of Hammer Studios, or the new version of Hammer Films, rather, that developed in that period. So we'll be talking about those 2 and doing a compare and contrast with those. Obviously, it came from a book by Susan Hill, which was also a really successful West End play, which was ran for years and years, which I've never seen, but apparently is awesome and creepy. And because it's Christmas and because those are spooky and Christmas is about ghost stories, we'll be also looking at some of our favourite ghost stories on screen, on TV, in films, or wherever, I guess. Because it's been certainly a good number. I was thinking the other day, or I was reading something about The Others, the really creepy Nicole Kidman one. Do you remember that one?
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
That's
creepy.
Spooky. That's a kind of shiver me timbers one. So, and I think that's 20 years old, because it was, Christ, yeah, shit, I think that was 2001. Oh my God.
Oh man.
So
let's not go there again. Yeah. Time is just flying by. Well, that sounds awfully very Christmassy. Not.
It is.
Can I add in Muppets Christmas Carol? Because it's a ghost story.
Oh yeah, there's only one more sleep till Christmas. Yeah, that's a must to watch. Actually, A Christmas Carol is of course one of the great ghost stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like this. Well, we can squeeze these in next month. Actually, I do like the Bill Murray Scrooged. I think that's tremendous.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And quite creepy at times, surprisingly. The ghosts are genuinely horrific.
Yeah.
Michael Caine.
Good effects.
Yeah. We can get some Dickens in there for sure. That's where so much this stuff comes from. But yeah, so we'll join you and see you and hear you and all that on that December episode. But I think that's it, Sarah, for this evening.
It is indeed.
Thanks for joining us. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to go away and have those dreams about Mads. With his big sweeping cloak. And thanks for joining us. See you next time. It's good night from me and
good night from me. Bye-bye.
Bye.